rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick, and I am very thankful to see several of the Whiskey Warrior P1s and followers of this program who have checked into the chat and have said basically that they are alive. And most of them appear to have power. I still haven't seen Bonnie check in yet, which makes me a little concerned. But, you know, unfortunately that there's millions without power down there as of right now. And at last count, 30 people have been counted as dead, unfortunately. And, of course, some of the folks have been talking about different things that are now, completely wiped out. Yeah, it's just, that was a big storm. Category 4, when she landed, she turned into a tropical storm or tropical depression shortly after going up through Georgia. There is a dam in North Carolina that is apparently close to failing, I'm hearing, or is in imminent danger of failing due to all of the rain that that area has been receiving over the last 24 hours. So very thankful that you are all safe, that you are alive, that you're, you know, it doesn't seem like too much, at least in your world, has been damaged, but definitely prayers going out to all of those who have been affected by this. My brother-in-law checked in this morning and told us that, hey, we're okay. Got a little windy, but everything seems to be fine. And I'm seeing pictures and, you know, obviously video of people being, you know, knee deep or close to knee deep in water from the storm surge and all those kinds of things. So yeah, just if you got a spare a prayer or two for those folks that have been affected, that would be great. Then of course the left immediately jumped on this and was saying that Donald Trump and Trump's Project 2025, which again is not Trump's deal. It's not Trump's thing. Trump's agenda is Agenda 47. Let's just point that out. But anyway, the left immediately jumped on Project 2025 and was saying, get rid of NOAA, get rid of, you know, FEMA, get rid of all these other things, which, you know, realistically, when you look in the Constitution, things like that are not part of the constitutional, are not part of the constitutional contract. Just like with healthcare, it's not part of the federal government's job to do any of that stuff. And so the strict constitutionalist inside me points that out to my mind every single time when I talk about it. So anyway, yeah, the left is just nuts. I mean, they just are. I got a couple stories on that tonight as well. So I have a proposal. And I was debating, well, first, let me go ahead and get things started. Let's go to the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, being led by our very own My News over on Rumble. So please, if you are of mind, stand, remove your hats, place your hand over your hearts, and join in with My News in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And of course, thank you very much, My News, for that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance, here on the program, it's really simple. All you have to do is record yourself reciting it. And when you are done, take that audio file and email it to me. Go ahead and email it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. All right, tonight's headliner, promotion, sponsor, whatever you want to call them, is TGRN. That's True Grit Roots Network with their TGRN Blues channel. And I want to tell you about one of the fantastic programs, which, by the way, this particular radio show just topped 1,000 episodes. That's right, 1,000 episodes. I'm a little far away from that right now. I'm only in the 400s. So this radio show has been going on for quite some time. It is put together by Big Daddy Ray, who has been in blues for quite some time. But let me tell you, it's Blues Therapy Radio, and Blues Therapy Radio plays blues you need to hear. We include new releases from all of your favorites as well as classics, but we also bring music that you might not otherwise ever hear. From regional favorites around the USA to music from artists from many different countries, Blues Therapy Radio is a blues rock show, but we aren't penned in by that description alone. Try it once, and you'll be back. This is an award-winning blues show from Hall of Fame DJ Big Daddy Ray. Blues Therapy airs Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Central Time, and also has an encore presentation Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Time. I encourage you and invite you to come and check out Blues Therapy Radio exclusively on TGRN, True Grit Roots Network. And that is found at tgrn.net. You can listen right through your browser, or if you are of desiring to have an application, you can download our app from tgrn.net. Also, too, if you already have the Live 365 Odyssey, that's AUDACY, or iHeartRadio apps on your phone, you can search us up through their catalog of digital radio stations. TGRN, True Grit Roots Network, with TGRN Blues, based out of Austin, Texas. And of course, that is a wonderful, wonderful endeavor, which I am a part of, just to be honest. All right. And it looks like Three Chevy's family, who was in Tallahassee, I don't know, Tallahassee, however you want to say it, I guess. I'm going to probably get nailed on that here for just a minute. Okay, so Mark asks a question. Mark on Facebook is asking a question, which is Soros buying Odyssey? No, he is not buying Odyssey. He is buying 200 radio stations from Odyssey. And he's trying to get that cleared through the FCC. So he's not buying Odyssey directly, but he's buying 200 radio stations that they own. All right. So let's go ahead and get started here. First of all, the New York City mayor, that's Eric Adams, he arrived this morning to turn himself in to face the charges in his federal corruption case. Now, I explained this case yesterday. I explained what the charges were against him, and it seems like they go back quite a ways. So this is going to be quite interesting to see how this all goes in the future. But, well, let's go ahead and just listen to a guy by the name of Ron Kuby and how he breaks down a little bit of what is going on.
Yeah, the indictment itself is really two cases, but they're related.
One is the sexier part of the case, the flight upgrades, the hotel rooms, the gifts from Turkey. The problem with that is these are all small things. Okay, so he got to fly business class rather than economy. You can do that with points and airline miles. And the things that he did for the Turkish government, he expedited a building being approved by the fire department. That happens every day in New York. The more serious part of the indictment, however, is the funneling of Turkish government funds into an American election through straw donors, which enabled him to reap tremendous amounts of money for his election campaign back in 2020 and now through New York's matching system. So that's a lot more serious. Had it just been airline tickets and free hotel rooms, I don't think this case would have ever been brought. I will say, though, if I'm going to sell my soul to a foreign government like Turkey, I want, a luxury villa on the Bosphorus. I want offshore accounts. I don't want comp meals. The meat in the case is the illegal campaign contributions from foreign citizens and foreign nationals. As people may have noticed, that's the kind of thing the government takes very seriously, and pretty much people across the political spectrum agree on the general principle that foreign governments and foreign officials should not be supporting candidates in American elections. Mr. Adams' attorney is
Yeah, so basically, I mean, again, keeping this in mind, basically keeping this in mind is that
a very skilled defense lawyer, and as a
he is
defense lawyer myself,
he's
not quite
being
as skilled. He's
being indicted because of those connections to Turkey, and obviously, this is kind of a bad situation. I should remind myself to never go full screen with those guys. But anyway, this is basically kind of the bad situation. Like he pointed out, some of the complimentary gifts that he got, the federal government probably wouldn't necessarily go down that path. But considering the fact that we have a lot of corruption that's going on in our government, maybe we should start taking a look at stuff like that. Because that seems to be the gateway to more nefarious things that are going on. Well, all of that being the case, he basically turned himself in to face for the charges. He appeared before the judge shortly after 12 p.m. and pleaded not guilty in the case. And essentially, when he walked into the courtroom, he quickly took his seat at the defense table, remained quiet, staring straight ahead until his plea. He's got a serious demeanor about him, so on and so forth. So he's taking it seriously, but we'll just have to kind of see what happens in this case. Now, again, this is just going to be one of those things that we're going to have to watch and keep in mind about. Now, speaking of watching and keeping in mind, obviously you saw the news at the bottom, or the news headline at the bottom, where Harris is down at the border, and she's making remarks at the Arizona border. She went to a small town. I can't remember the name of it. But she is attempting to essentially deflect her culpability in all of the border nefariousness over the course of the last 3+ years. Well, something came out on X, and James Woods, I'm a great fan of James Woods. I'm a follower of him, which, by the way, he's got not now that he's sort of done with Oppenheimer, he started a music collaboration with Shooter Jennings, and they've been slowly releasing music. It's actually pretty good. So you might want to check that out on Spotify or any of the other places that are out there. But James Woods, who is a staunch proponent and poster on X, it's the only place that he posts on the social medias. He posted a photograph of a Fox News a Fox News report that was Brett Baer was obviously talking, and he was it basically showed the number of criminals and crimes that these criminals have done, according to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So this is according to U.S. ICE, of the people that have come across. Folks, this ain't good. There it is, right there. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more on it for you here. Look at that. 425,000 plus convicted criminals that have been brought in to this country. 13,000 of those, more than 13,000, almost 13,100, have been convicted of homicide, and almost 16,000 have been convicted of rape. She's at the border trying to say that she is stronger on the border than Trump is, which, by the way, that isn't true. But just, I mean, look at these staggering numbers. And she was the border czar. She was the one in charge of everything. And in fact, Joe Biden, when he was on The View, confirmed all of that by saying, hey, she could have done anything. She could have done anything. Yeah. So she doesn't care about the border. She just doesn't. She doesn't care about the border at all. And once again, this is yet another item that Kamala Harris is lying about. This is what she brought in as the border czar, being the one in charge of the border. This is what she has brought in, and those are only the ones that we know about, folks. This isn't the ones that we don't know about. Immigration, folks, allowing unfettered immigration is the wrong direction. Not only for this country, but definitely for any society that is looking to stay safe. Yeah. So this is not a good thing at all when it comes to that. So, yeah. All right. Well, some new information that just came out here locally, meaning locally to me, but it's also indicative of a much wider problem and prospect throughout the country. Pretty much any place where there is a Democrat in charge of cities. And this, honestly, this gives me a little bit of pause because of the fact that it's going to directly affect individuals who live in the Seattle police or the Seattle police covered areas. So here in Wilkes-Barre, and I'm sure this shows up on many other occasions, many other places, many other people, but here in Wilkes-Barre, the resource-depleted Seattle Police Department won't respond to burglar alarms anymore. I'm like, what? They won't respond to burglar alarms? Well, this is what's happening because of the fact that Seattle, as a victim of the defund the police during the quote-unquote Great Awakening of 2020, has apparently lost so many resources, so many officers, that a letter was put out by Interim Police Chief Sue Rahr, and she revealed that these changes are going to take place beginning Tuesday, October 1st. The letter said that Seattle 911 Center receives around 13,000 burglar alarm calls per year. However, fewer than 4% of those in 2023 actually resulted in an arrest or even a report being written. So what she is saying in her letter is that SPD will only dispatch officers to calls from alarm companies with supporting evidence, such as audio or video or panic alarms or other eyewitness evidence that a person is actually illegally entering or attempting to enter a residence or commercial property. Now, obviously, Washington alarm companies are expressing concern over the proposed changes, but they're set to take place with minimum notice as of October 1st. Well, let me ask you this, and anyone who has an alarm, you put those signs out in front, like, this property protected by ADT or whatever it is. You put them out in front of everything and try and dissuade criminals from breaking into your home because of the fact that they have an alarm on there and it's going to attract attention. What happens if the police basically announce, hey, we're not coming. We're not bothering to come. We're not going to even do anything with this? Well, do you think that's going to embolden criminals? To make it so that even if they break in and the alarm goes off, even with somebody in the house, let's say, do you think that's possible that they're going to not worry about whether or not the alarm goes off? I think so. I think that's what's going to happen, is that you're going to see more and more actual burglaries going on because the criminals are going to be emboldened, knowing that the police are not actually going to head their direction, regardless of whether the alarm is going off or not. This is a bit of a problem. If you live in Seattle and are paying taxes, which is what funds these services and resources, you're going to be having some definite challenges here that not to mention the fact that, even if the alarm goes off, you're also going to find that more and more people are probably going to, especially the burglars, are probably going to get shot by homeowners, knowing that they're not even, the police aren't even going to bother to roll. This is a huge issue, but this is what the Democrats have been driving for. This is what they are wanting. They want stuff out of this. And yes, Mark, I live in a rural area. I have a large piece of property and I live in a rural area, so I'm not concerned about this. Seattle PD, whatever. They can do whatever they want, but again, it's just indicative of a symptom that, unfortunately, the reduction in police presence in these cities, this is going to cause some serious issues. This is what's happening. This is why people like me who have been able to say this fairly easily, which is get out of the cities. You want to be safe, get out of the cities. So, anyway. All right, real quick diversion here. I just saw, or I'm seeing, that Bonnie has checked in. Bonnie is the last of my known Florida contingent down there, and she has checked in. So welcome, Bonnie. I am glad you're safe. Believe me, I am very, very thankful that you have made it through. So pretty much everybody that I'm aware of down there in Florida has all made it through. relatively unscathed, I should say. So congratulations for surviving and making it through, and I'm glad that things are at least coming out okay for most people down there. All right. In conjunction with this, okay, in conjunction with this whole thing here, I saw this, and this happened on Capitol Hill, by the way, in a congressional hearing. Published in the Daily Fetched, but it's published in other places as well. A former FBI agent has dropped a major warning. You got to ask yourself, why? Why is he saying this? Now, I can tell you this much. I mean, 2024 is going to be a very interesting ending to the year, coming up starting in November and possibly even beyond that. But this guy issues a very stark warning. Here it is in the Daily Fetched. Former FBI agent drops major warning. Arm yourself, stock up on food, and pray. He's a former FBI agent, and he is urging citizens to prepare for the coming months. Now, here's the thing, okay? And I also have had a tiny bit, very small sliver of insider baseball that the Longshoremen's Union is preparing to strike. They had some sort of a special meeting, probably to let everybody know that the plans are on the table for a strike to happen. So we have the Longshoremen's Union going into a strike, which will affect shipping and supplies across the country. Several of the East Coast docks are already like preparing for this. This is going to severely impact anything. Even if we have some docks open, I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of challenges and issues regardless. Reports are, as I've already mentioned on this program, that one day of stoppage can take up to a week for it to recover. So you've got that. And also, too, we have, of course, the threats of violence from the left in terms of the election coming up. So if you're not preparing by now, if you don't have something put together by now, I really feel for you, because you need to. I never really thought about this. It was when I was younger, it didn't really register to me how vulnerable someone could be. Living out where I do now, you can ask Mrs. Whiskey. I've been pushing to get things put together, because I have a sneaking suspicion that there is something imminent on the horizon. Don't know what exactly that is, whether it's, civil war here, domestic terrorism, even foreign terrorism. I mean, we've got all kinds of things. There was a report too. There's rumors running around that somehow some terrorists have brought in surface-to-air missiles. Dan Bongino talked about it this morning. Surface-to-air missiles to potentially take out Donald Trump. We have Donald Trump and Donald Trump's plane. We have Donald Trump going and obviously having 2 attempted assassinations, plus the Iran plot to get him. The entire violence level and tension level in this country has been rising for the last 10 years. ever since we had, I would say ever since Obama came into office, because regardless of what everybody says, Obama, I believe, was the first one to have started the entire division in this country. Yeah, it's not Trump. Trump is not dividing this country, but yeah. Anyway, he was raising questions, and why he even said this in front of the Judiciary Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. Well, you got to understand where he's coming from. He essentially testified that he was part of the FBI. He was asking questions and raising questions about the number of federal informants that were present during January 6th. And since he's asked those questions, he has been the subject of persecution from the agency ever since. He said, quote, "The FBI questioned my allegiance to the United States, suspended my security clearance, suspended my pay, refused to allow me to obtain outside employment or even accept any charities." This guy's name is Marcus Allen. No relation to the football player, I don't believe. He added, "There are no words strong enough to describe the impact of the FBI's lies about me and that have had an effect on my family and me." So essentially what he did is in September of 2021, he sent an email to his supervisors, which triggered that severe response from the Bureau and ended his career. "The stress has taken the toll on our health, and our children have suffered, traumatized by the thought of our door getting kicked in or dad not coming home," he stated. However, it wasn't until Allen concluded his remarks that those present began paying attention. The former FBI staffer urged Americans to prepare for potential future challenges. He said, quote, "Arm yourself and know how to defend yourself. Make 3 or 4 friends in your neighborhood and promise to come to each other's mutual aid in times of hardship." Allen also advised citizens to follow practices reminiscent of the Great Depression. He said, "During the Great Depression, people stocked up their pantry, so I think that's a good practice, especially in our economic times. And make sure you have 3 to 4 months of food," he cautioned. His advice to stockpile food is a grim warning of what could be in store over the coming months. Now, keep in mind, one of the things that is high on the list in terms of the shipping situation is reportedly food. Now, we all lived through the pandemic, and most of us with brains know that there are certain items that potentially could become scarce. One of them being toilet paper. Okay? So, pay attention to what's going on. Granted, the longshoremen's strike isn't necessarily as widespread of an impact as what the pandemic probably, was. But keep in mind that it'll be large enough that it can affect many things running down the line. So this is not a good thing. Now, the former agent also urged Americans to engage in spiritual practices, regular prayer, and Bible reading. What does he possibly know, or what has he experienced that serves as a warning to the rest of us? Okay. Got to ask yourself that question. And honestly, I understand, there are people who have difficulties with preparing, but in times of crisis, you need to make sure that you are able to do a couple of things. In my particular case here, just as an example, my biggest concern is going to be how to handle water. If power goes out, if there's, some unrest or whatever, and we no longer have power, how am I going to get water where I'm at? And not only just for me, because also too, keep in mind, you have other, in my case, my particular case, I have other life forms in the way of my animals that are dependent upon me. I have a dog, 2 cats. Now, granted, they can sometimes eat what we humans eat, but it's a consideration that a lot of people, when you're thinking about a survival situation, they may go unthought about, and then you're stuck because then you have this animal that needs to be cared for, and you can't do it. What about first aid? What about protection for yourself and your family? And then, of course, you have food, too. You can live without food for a little while, but you cannot live without water. Water is maybe 3 days. Food, you could go maybe a week. And these are the kinds of things that you need to start playing in your head in terms of preparation of what ifs. Because I guarantee you that if Donald Trump gets into office, okay, the left is going to go absolutely berserk. We've already seen it. We saw it when he got into office in 2016. We saw it when the elections were happening in 2020. This was all precursors to what is a potentiality here in 2024. But back then we didn't have the potential of external challenges that I've been talking about on this program, such as China invading Taiwan or the war in the Middle East or the war in Ukraine, all of which have been the heat has been gradually turning up in all of those locations. That, my friends, is something that we need to pay attention to. Going through the hurricane situation and watching it from afar, I also realize that there are certain areas of this country where people just expect natural disasters to happen. One of them is in Florida. And so Floridians are, generally speaking, prepared for the most part for something to go in that case, especially when they see a storm on the horizon. And I'm not talking about physically looking for the storm on the horizon. I mean paying attention, especially during this time of year, because this is essentially hurricane season. But the point that I'm making, of course, is that there are certain areas of this country where life itself is conducive to being prepared at all times, but there are other places that are not. And I guarantee you, people inside cities neither have the space nor do they have the wherewithal, I don't believe, to be able to be fully prepared for certain things. And what do you think is going to happen when they run out? They're going to split and come out into the rural areas. They're going to have to make a move in order to essentially survive. So just keep that in mind, which is part of where the protection comes into play. To arm yourself, be able to defend yourself, so on and so forth. Now, you might be thinking that I am speaking in a pure sense of hyperbole here, that I've been, giving an unfair image or view of the leftists in this society. All you have to do is listen to them. In particular, you can listen to our elected leaders to understand where they are, where their minds are coming from. Here in Hot Air, there's a clip of an individual who essentially kind of laid it all out on the table, let's say. So this was a Democrat who is in the, she's a congressional delegate from the Virgin Islands. Her name is Stacey Plaskett. All you got to do is listen to her, and you can understand how far gone these people actually are. Take a listen.
What is the point of this subcommittee? Because it's necessary for the public and the media to hear, to try, and provide cover for the eradication of the Department of Justice and the FBI. We are having these hearings so that you become immune. You become inured to the notion of the removal of the FBI and DOJ, so that those agencies are no longer there to serve as a check against white nationalism, great replacement theorists, Christian nationalists, white fragility, fascists, and the twice impeached convicted felon, former president and would-be dictator, Donald Trump.
Now notice she doesn't mention anything about the BLM riots, Antifa. She doesn't mention anything about the people who have been attacking pro-life organizations. She doesn't mention the fact that the FBI was weaponized to go after Catholic groups. She doesn't mention the fact that Donald Trump actually doesn't pose any kind of a threat to democracy. He is looking to bring back American values and principles to the office. This is who they are, folks. This is exactly who they are. By making this speech, she is actually celebrating the fact that the left and the Democrats have been able to create a scenario or a situation in that the FBI, the DOJ, is weaponized. That's the whole point of the committee that she was testifying in front of. This is their thoughts. You know, Dan Bongino has said in the past that we think they are people, and by we, I mean conservatives. Conservatives think that the Democrats and the left are people with bad ideas. The left and the Democrats believe that conservatives are bad people with ideas. There is a difference there in terms of that thought. Let me say that again, just to be on the clear side here. Conservatives believe that Democrats and leftists are people with bad ideas. The left and the Democrats believe that conservatives are bad people with ideas. That's the difference. And like I was telling you last night with regards to the word freedom, and it was an example, but the adoption of changing the definitions of language is a tool of the left. And they do this because of the fact that they are attempting to make it so that conservatives are the bad people with ideas. And they're attempting to paint us in that light. When in reality, conservatives, for the most part, just want to be left alone. They just want to live their life, go after freedom, go after liberty, and are standing up for things like justice and truth, unlike what the left does. Well, it's not just her. She's just the latest. But here we have, of course, the return of the Wicked Witch of Arkansas, wonderful Hillary Clinton. And here she discusses jailing Americans for posting what she determines as misinformation. Take a listen.
And boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence. Because
so she, and of course they cut it off, but she is advocating that Americans who have free speech rights, God-given, enshrined in our Constitution, God-given rights to speak freely, like what I am doing right now to all of you. And she believes that somebody like me should get locked up, and that would serve as a deterrent to all of the others that are out there as well. But you know what? She's not running for president. She's not running for office anymore. So, therefore, we have to take a look at who actually is running for office. Well, here we go. Governor Stolen Valor Tampon Tim Walz, right here. Listen to him talk about freedom of speech.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Tim, buddy. Well, you're not my buddy. You'll never be my buddy as far as I'm concerned. I'm actually disgusted that you're even in public service or public office right now. But beyond that, okay? Beyond that, he thinks that hate speech is bad. Misinformation is bad. Well, I hate to tell you this, Timmy, but the First Amendment doesn't classify anything in terms of hate speech as being a, an exception to the rule. Okay? Misinformation and disinformation has been used for generations by advertising agencies to get you to buy products. They've had all kinds of things that, it's called freedom of speech for a reason. And the only disinfectant, realistically, is to shine the light of truth on these things, such as you're being a stolen valor coward. That is an example. But you know what? He's only running for VP. What about the illustrious Democrat candidate for president and current VP? Well, here she is, apparently speaking in 2019 at the NAACP. Let's take a listen.
And will put the Department of Justice of the United States back in the business of justice. We will double the Civil Rights Division and direct law enforcement to counter this extremism. We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms, because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable as a community.
So that's what I thought the protections of Section 230 in the Telecommunications Act was actually designed for. Was that you had protections because you are a platform rather than being a publisher. But apparently she wants the platforms to be considered publishers and take hits for things that run on their platforms. In other words, somebody like Rumble and YouTube and X and even Facebook, they could come and go after the platform for something that I put out, that I say. They're looking to censor speech. They're looking to make sure that you folks have no way of hearing the messages that come out of people like me, Bongino, Mark Levin, and even Rush Limbaugh, rest in peace, before him. That we have no ability to search for the truth and bring it to light and put it into the light so that it can be disinfected, such as this. And these kinds of calls for all of this stuff is just the tip of the iceberg, people. Let me explain, because something has been going on. The left and the Democrats have been in charge of and this is part of the reason why Donald Trump needs and wants to get, also Graham Allen, thank you. There's many, believe me, there's many that are out there. But this is part of the reason why Donald Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education, because it's no longer the Department of Education. It's now considerably like the Department of Indoctrination. What am I talking about with that? Well, they've already been doing it, folks. Anytime you see young people, and by young people, I mean ones that haven't lived in the world, in the real world, the world where all of us adults live in, the ones who have the brains and intelligence to be able to think critically. When you come out of the education market, you have certain biases and slants because of the fact, as I believe I showed you it, or at least I read an article about this, where 95 to 98% of all the professors, the so-called experts, are all left-leaning out of the universities. There's very few conservatives or people that are claiming that they are conservatives in the profession, in many professions, outside of actual factual professions like engineering and those kinds of things. But they are starting it extremely early. And it's not just the education system, it's also parents. Because what a lot of people what a lot of people do understand, those with brains like my Whiskey Warrior P1s, like people that watch programs such as mine, all realize is that it's this type of stuff is taught. It is a learned response. What am I talking about? Well, there was a study. This is in Hot Air. So there was a study done by CNN and partnered with a psychologist, Ashley Landrum, to see how kids view politics. And some of the results were extremely easy to predict, and others, according to the piece, were pretty disturbing. Well, here's the CNN piece on it.
Overall, the biggest finding, the children in the study were polarized, with what researchers called more extreme responses from the blue state kids than the red state kids.
Donald Trump, he did bad things. He's like Hitler.
He
only wanted to be president so that he can just control everybody.
Trump is supporting January 6th now. I remember that January 6th was a bunch of Republicans believing Trump. I feel like they thought Trump was a god. People got arrested. I think one officer died afterwards. That was a big day.
The study found that these Democrat-leaning kids were about 9 times more likely to express negative emotions about Donald Trump than Republican-leaning kids were about Kamala Harris. Why might that be? Psychologist Ashley Landrum has some ideas.
So Donald Trump is a very polarizing figure, and it's very possible that the kids are reacting to their parents reacting to Donald Trump being a very different kind of political figure than what we've seen before. So do the red state kids hold as strong of attitudes? Well, not when we're talking about Kamala Harris. In part, that could be because they don't know that much about her.
Landrum was also curious about how kids saw their peers in the political divide.
So do you think that the kids that live in those 2 houses would be friends with each other?
They can. There's no law breaking that.
It doesn't matter if you are different by skin color, or it doesn't matter if you are different by people. You can still be friends.
The study found that Republican-leaning kids were more open to visiting a Democrat-supporting household. The Democrat-leaning kids were about 5 times more likely to say they would not want to go to a pro-Trump house.
Would they be okay with you going over to somebody's house who is really supportive of President Trump?
No.
No? And why not?
Because they know that he's not like black people, so they will not be happy to see me.
Would your family let you go over to somebody's house who's really supportive of Donald Trump?
No.
No, they wouldn't?
No.
And why not?
Because, my mom and dad don't like Donald Trump at all. Not a single bit.
Would you be okay going over to somebody's house whose family really likes Kamala Harris?
I think it'd be fine. It's just about the personality of the people.
Would your family be okay if you went over to somebody's house who really liked Donald Trump?
If I want to be real over here, so if I just went over there, I imagine be a good old argument or a fight. Maybe like a food fight or something.
Interesting. So the left, who is supposed to be the more tolerant, the left, who is supposed to be the, all-loving, yet their kids demonstrate otherwise. And believe me, I can tell you this same kind of thing continues not only in children, but also in the adults. You've seen all the videos. So which side is the one that is causing the division? It's not Trump. It's not conservatives. It's the left. And the kids are going to perpetuate that until hopefully they can be taught otherwise. All right, folks, I am at the end of my hour, so that is it for me this evening. Do me a favor, if you would, please head on over to rumble.com if you haven't already. Get yourself an account. It is free, and once you get your account and get signed in, you can then search up the American Perspective channel and follow it there. Hit that green follow button, and you will be notified every time I go live on Rumble. Also, too, if you would, please make sure you hit all those thumbs up and like buttons, everything across all of my platforms. That helps to elevate these videos and my broadcasts higher and gain more exposure. I would like to continue this and keep growing the channel. We got to get more and more people as a part of the movement, the conservative movement, to take back America. We will see you tomorrow night. Tomorrow is Saturday, so it's 1 hour later, okay? 1 hour later, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great evening. Glad to know that everybody is safe and sound. Prayers up for those that unfortunately did lose their lives as a part of it, a part of Helene. And we will see you tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.